And away we go. It's the DFS Early Bird presented by Awesemo.com. Dan Strafford and Adam Scher along with you on this Thursday morning, getting ready for a 5-game NBA slate. We will go game by game on this here podcast. I'll bring you up to speed on Yahoo's offerings as well as they help sponsor this podcast as we roll forward. Adam, how the hell are you doing?
Doing pretty good. Pretty hectic Wednesday night, I guess, with late news after a really, really slow day of news. So just finished up with all of that and now watching my lineups crash and burn.
I mean, listen, for those who play primarily on DK, late swap has been something you've been dealing with for a while. FanDuel had it for a little bit. Weird, incarnations of their product. But there's probably not a worse feeling, Adam, I would assume, than one, building lineups, doing all the research, doing your projections, doing your optimizer, then late swapping, meaning doing the research again, looking at news, and then watching them crash and burn in the late games. I would assume that's
pretty much.
Okay.
I try and late swap as little as I can, but obviously there's situations you kind of have to.
Right. And there's two forms of late swapping, right? News, where you see that you have to get off a player because of injury or whatever, or the late swap where you clearly see that you are not cashing and you're just trying to make moves to maybe change up your lineup, get away from a higher owned player. But either way, I have the fear, and I don't know if it's FOMO or JOMO or one of the OMOs, but where I swap off a player and then that player that I swapped off of goes off. Like that's always fun as well. But nonetheless, we will talk about these 5 games here and get you set up so that when you hit the NBA strategy show on Thursday morning, and then you have, of course, the NBA Deep Dive at 5 p.m. and 6 p.m. is live before lock. That might be slightly off because it's 7:30 lock. But either way, you get all this free content on YouTube. If you want to head on over to Awesemo and become a member, we'd love to have you. You can check out Awesemo_com on Twitter for all of our giveaways and our promo codes and all of that stuff as well. So we start a slate. We have Phoenix, New York, Boston, Milwaukee, Utah, New Orleans, Orlando, and the Clippers in LA, and Denver and Golden State. I will point out that as of this very minute, we do not have any lines. There are no over-unders, no spreads that I see before me. So we're going to do our best to estimate, guess as to where these lines will be and exactly what games we should be targeting and which ones may be closest. This Phoenix-New York game, I assume, will be a pretty close line just because how bad these two teams have been. Now, Suns slightly better than the Knicks, but they are on the road to New York. We have Devin Booker as our most expensive point guard on this slate. He's not your most expensive player. You have Gobert, Jokic, Leonard, and Giannis above him. But Booker is our most expensive point guard, our most expensive shooting guard. Phoenix, New York, I assume you're taking matchups here for anybody against the Knicks, as their defense has not been very good on the season. But what do you got here in this matchup? How do you break it down, and what do you see as some of your favorite matchups?
Yeah, so I think I saw that Ricky Rubio's not on the injury report, but that Kelly Oubre is in concussion protocol.
Yeah.
So I still think Booker is a good play. It's a bad Knicks defense, obviously. He's not as good without Rubio, of course. And so his price tag going up a little bit with Rubio coming back takes a little bit of appeal away. But at the same time, Kelly Oubre, presumably not playing, is a high usage guy.
He's definitely out. He is out for Thursday, yeah.
Okay, then you should still get plenty of usage for Booker, and Ricky Rubio should get an uptick in usage as well. DeAndre Ayton should play low 30s in minutes. He's still affordable against the Knicks front court, and you should get a nice bump in minutes from Mikal Bridges. So I think that there are a lot of pieces on Phoenix that are appealing.
The Knicks on the year, just to cite the stat I used a lot, points in the paint, they're 4th best in the NBA. They have obviously Mitchell Robinson has played very well. Julius Randle, Bobby Portis on the defensive end have been okay. Ayton, just in case I ever fall asleep at night, I have my alarm to go off to do the podcast. But nonetheless, as we continue here, Knicks have been pretty good, points in the paint, but Ayton at a price point that makes some sense here, and I think on a 5-game slate will be somewhat intriguing at 7,700. You do have some high-priced guys at center who might be a little bit more enticing on a site like DK. I will point out that you have question marks around Marcus Morris and Mitchell Robinson. That is because of the neck injury for Marcus Morris. Mitchell Robinson has had the Q-tag for a couple of games now. I'm pretty sure it was a foot or toe issue for him on the year. They've also brought in, what's his name? Wooten, who is another high flyer for the Knicks. So their front court mates. Maybe there is enough rim protection between Kenny Wooten and Mitchell Robinson, but we'll wait to see as information comes out. What about the Knicks side of the ball? Any guards, forwards, Julius Randle make it into the mix here at 8K?
Yeah, I think that Randall obviously is the first guy you look to from the Knicks. It's a good matchup for him against a fast Phoenix team who doesn't play defense. So I think that he really stands out. He'd be my number one guy from the Knicks. Then you have obviously the Q tag on Morris. If he's back, he's the second highest usage guy on the team. If he's out, you should get a bump for RJ Barrett. And then Mitchell Robinson, who knows where the minutes end up for him, but he's a guy that whenever he's down in the upper 4K price range, I'm willing to take shots on him in tournaments just because he is so volatile. And so when he's popular or when his salary is expensive, it's pretty easy to get away and just hope that he doesn't kill you. But when his salary is really low, I like being overweight on him just because he has the potential to win you a slate at that price point.
Makes a lot of sense. Very efficient around the rim, clearly with the lobs that they go to for him. We'll keep an eye on any other injuries in this one, but I am seeing that, again, to reiterate that Kelly Oubre is out for this one. So keep that in mind. As
Elf is also way too cheap on DraftKings at 5,500.
Who is?
Peyton.
Oh, okay.
Just like he should probably be like 6,200, 6,300.
Just assuming Milwaukee's the limited minutes because of the blowout. That's where that context comes in, right? He was only played 19 minutes because they were blown out from the second quarter on.
Oh, he was also ejected.
Oh, right. That's right. I forgot about that. So yes, okay. So do not do what I just did in box score surf and forget about the context of why something happened. But
the way you got completely quiet, I thought he was ruled out or something.
Oh no! I was just reading. I get quiet when I read. Let's talk next about Boston and Milwaukee. This is a line I'm intrigued by. I assume the over/under will be high teens, 218, 219 would be my guess. If I remember correctly, Boston. Not one of the highest based teams. I know Milwaukee is your highest based team on the year. Quick scroll through here, just double check. Boston is 20th overall. So maybe low 220s, 221 on this one. But clearly a game that we will be intrigued by, I think, at least from what the Celtics can do up against Milwaukee, who has been an absolute buzzsaw on the season. Jason Tatum was out on Wednesday night with a knee issue. Have not seen any reports on whether or not he'll be out multiple games. We'll try to look here as we talk through. No other injuries that I think really impact this game. Robert Williams.
Jalen's questionable.
Jaylen Brown is questionable.
Yep.
Oh, was that just
it came out right after the game against Detroit.
Okay, so Jaylen Brown. All right, so here it is. Suffered a right thumb sprain during Wednesday's loss to the Pistons. It's unclear when exactly he sustained the injury. Roto Wire goes on from there in their note. But if you have Brown and Tatum out, clearly that will affect the line and maybe affect the potential for a blowout here. But what opens up on the Boston side? Is this a Gordon Hayward sort of game where he's 6,400 and Milwaukee does, if I remember correctly, give up some of the most three-point attempts and best three-point percentage on the year? Is Gordon Hayward potentially in our plans on Thursday night?
Yeah, I think that obviously a lot comes down to the injuries with Tatum and Brown because they are both high usage guys. If Tatum is in, I think he's pretty appealing. He's second on the team to Kemba with 6.6 three-point attempts per game. Kemba leads the team with 8.9. Kemba gets a usage bump if Tatum or Brown are out as well. You do kind of run into efficiency issues with him, though, because he is such a high-frequency pick-and-roll guy that teams can kind of key in on that if they're good at stopping it. And obviously, Milwaukee's a good defensive team. So I think that Tatum would look really good or Brown would look really good, whichever of them are in. And then Kemba is a reasonable option as well.
If Tatum and Brown are out, do you go cheaper here, or do you think it just becomes a matchup you don't want to be on?
I mean, you would look to Hayward because he would play as many minutes as he can and get a ton of usage. Smart would get a ton of minutes. But the thing with Boston is that you don't get normally when one of the main guys gets hurt, you don't really get like one cheap guy that fills in and just soaks up all the minutes. You get like just a bunch of guys rotating through, whether it's Grant Williams, Brad Wanamaker, Javonte Green. It's normally pretty messy. So if they do have both guys out, I would take some shots at Brad Wanamaker just because he would be, I think, first in line to get some more minutes. But I don't think there's like a clear-cut beneficiary outside of the main group.
And looking at eligibility on DK, a little bit different than I've seen of late. Giannis is just power forward eligible on Thursday. Has that been a longstanding thing for him?
I don't think so.
No. And I get it. Shorter slates. They try to make some different moves. They make typically players are cheaper, but the positional eligibility I find intriguing here. That Giannis on the other side is just power forward eligible. Chris Middleton just small forward eligible. So keep that in mind as you are going through DK. I'll talk about Yahoo momentarily from what they have to offer, and they have MPE as well. Sorry, they have utility and guard and forward spots, not MPE. I should clarify there, but they have the ability to play different players at guard, forward, and utility. But interesting to see Giannis just power forward eligible. And this is a guy who mentioned that Knicks game. He played 21 minutes, Adam, and I know you know this. He had 37 points, 9 rebounds, 4 assists, and a block. Now, want to talk about, per 48s or per 36s or whatever you want to talk about. That's a pretty damn good stat line for such a short period of time. What do you make of this matchup? I know Boston good on the defensive end, but if Tatum's out, if Brown's out, do you think this is another full-go Giannis game at 11-7?
Yeah, I think that there should be a lot of value on the slate, so it shouldn't really be too tough to get up to him. Obviously, Boston is a good team defensively, but still a really, really good player in Giannis. And if Boston's at full strength, at least a decent chance that they are able to keep this game close. So, maybe you can get a couple of extra minutes out of Giannis. I think that, yeah, he's a good option. I think the price is pretty fair on him.
All right. What about the rest of the Bucks? Any pieces here that you think stand out as potential plays in this matchup, or is it Giannis and bust?
I think that Middleton and Bledsoe are both fairly priced. So if you have some lineups where you don't have Giannis and you're still trying to get exposure to that Milwaukee offense, obviously the next two guys in line are Middleton and Bledsoe, who are both perfectly fine options. Over
on Yahoo, you have the guaranteed tournaments for the NBA. They have a $3, a $1, and a $7 that I'm seeing open in the lobby. You can check them out. You also use the promo code AWESEMO to get your Yahoo Sports reward points. That's up to $30 in YSRPs, usurps, if you will. That will get you more playing time over there on the site. They also do have a quarter tournament and a couple of other pieces along the way. Remember that lineup block is 7:30. Yahoo, as I was saying, does have similar roster construction to DK without the MPE, and then they have similar scoring to FanDuel, but then their pricing completely different. And we'll check out maybe one or two prices before we go here, but I will point out on the NBA Strategy Show and on the other shows throughout the day, the content from EMAC, who does a lot of Yahoo-centric stuff. You get that available over at awesemo.com. Anything else from this Boston-Milwaukee game before we touch on Utah, New Orleans?
No, I think we can go to the Utah game.
All right, so we move on there, and we continue to keep an eye on Drew Holiday. He is out again, now against the Jazz. That's going to the New Orleans Times. So we will have no Drew Holiday. Lonzo Ball's price point is up at $7,900. This is a guy who clearly has triple-double ability anytime he steps on the court. He's had a roller coaster NBA career, but he's playing massive, massive minutes at him. He's up around 40 on a very typical basis. And this is a Utah Jazz team that, yes, their pace is down compared to the rest of the league, but this isn't the old school Jazz team from 4 or 5 years ago that played at bottom basement pace. It's a pace-up game for the Jazz against New Orleans. New Orleans pulled down a little bit, but do you like the New Orleans backcourt with Lonzo Ball and some of these other pieces to have a big game against Utah?
Yeah, I think that it is a tough matchup for the Pels, but without Drew, you still have a lot of usage and a lot of playmaking to go around. Lonzo's salary came up to where I think he's okay, but at $7,900 on DraftKings, there's going to be options I like more. Ingram's salary, though, is still really cheap. He's $8,400. He's averaged about 1.3 DraftKings points per minute without Drew on the floor this year. He's playing huge minutes as long as the Pels can stay in this game. So Ingram looks like a priority for me across the entire slate, not just the Pels. And then Favors probable as well. decent price tag at 5,900, but Ingram's the one that really stands out.
Yeah, you have Favors playing a little bit of sporadic minutes because of that hamstring issue, but playing in the mid-20s for the most part and has some upside here on the interior. Brandon Ingram's one of the first names that jumped off the page at me if this game stays close. Again, don't have a line, but assume this should be a fairly tight game too, right? Jazz on the roads, probably -4, -5 in favor of the Jazz would be my guess on this one. But maybe a little bit more than that. The Jazz are a better team, but without Drew Holiday, maybe you get to -6, 6.5. What do you like on the Jazz side? Do you go to a Donovan Mitchell at 7,400? I've enjoyed employing some Jordan Clarkson from time to time simply because he is just looked at to score and not do much else, and he's done just that in his short term here with the Jazz, save a couple of games. Any Utah Jazz entering into your early player pool here as we record?
I think Mitchell's salary looks really good. Obviously, he's been somewhat disappointing since the Conley injury, not doing quite as much as we had hoped. And now it is worth noting that with Clarkson there, with that second unit, you have Mitchell plays with the second unit, but it's not as appealing as it used to be because you have Moutier out there as a ball handler. You also have Clarkson out there shooting a ton. So it's not quite as productive, but still looking at 34, 35 minutes against the Pels at a cheap price tag for Mitchell. So that looks good. I think that in tournaments, you can look to Bogdanovich, who comes in with between a 27 and 28% usage rate since Conley's injury. He's scoring dependent, but definitely someone that they'll look to knock down some outside shots against the Pels. So I think that he's a reasonable tournament option.
All right. Keep an eye. Any of these, I know we talked about Lonzo Ball and some of the other pieces, but there's a ton of names in this backcourt for New Orleans. Is there any cheap option that you think steps up and has an opportunity between a Hart or a Moore or any of the other pieces potentially here? Alexander Walker that you might want to mention before we go on?
I don't think so. I mean, like Josh Hart, obviously he's cheap-ish and he plays minutes, but it's still not a particularly appealing matchup, and he's not a high usage guy. So he would be, I guess, the most appealing because he's cheaper than Etuan Moore. He's cheaper than Redick, but I still don't really think I get to a whole lot.
All right, so let's continue to Orlando and the Clippers. Just going to hit the old refresh here on a couple of sites that I'm checking for lines, see if I'm anywhere close to getting these right as we record here on Wednesday night, heading towards Thursday. But Orlando and the Clippers, I believe Paul George is out again, right? Yeah, he will not play Thursday with that hamstring issue. That continues to be a problem for him. I know that Fournier was out on Wednesday night with I think a quad issue. And so we'll keep an eye on that. That's on top of Jonathan Isaac, who has had an injury. They are actually now just reading they're applying for a disabled player exemption for Jonathan Isaac. That was a couple of days ago. So he will miss the remainder of the season. Hadn't seen he was out for the year as of yet, but that is the case for Isaac. And then I know DJ Augustine left too, right? Or he didn't play Wednesday. He didn't play with his knee issue. So some injuries to track here from the Orlando side of the ball. Anybody of interest between a Vucevic or Aaron Gordon at 6K? Are these price points cheap enough against a good Clippers team to entice you?
Yeah, obviously a lot will depend on injuries and how the game on Wednesday goes because it'll be really interesting to see how the rotation looks. We haven't had any games where, Isaac's out, Fournier's out, Augustine's out, Carter Williams is out. And obviously we don't know what the injury situation will be yet for this game, but you get like a 28.5% usage rate for Vooch when Fournier is off the floor. You get a bump for Fultz as well, and you could potentially see more minutes if Augustine is out. No real backup point guard here for Fultz in that case. And then Terrence Ross should play a ton of minutes. His salary jumped $900 since last night. But if Augustine and Fournier and Carter Williams are all out, you have to get a lot of minutes from Ross and more usage for him as well. So it has the potential to be one of those games where Orlando is very shorthanded, so the players will project well, but they're also most likely just going to get massacred by the Clippers. So there is like some risk in that area.
Yep, and that makes a ton of sense. And I would assume this game may be a little bit slotted behind a couple of the other ones on the slate. From the Clippers' perspective, Lou Williams, maybe a Kawhi Leonard. What do you like from the Clips' perspective?
Just going right back.
Kawhi is small forward only. So DK is doing some stuff on this slate, just to point
out.
Yeah,
it's like they did it with only expensive players.
Yeah, exactly.
Good players, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that Kawhi is a good option as always. He's still affordable. He just does everything when George isn't out there. He showed against he showed in the last game, like what can happen when he's actually knocking down his shots, because he takes plenty of them. He hit, I think, 6 or 7 threes in that one, and it basically really quickly just turned into, if you don't have Kawhi in your lineups, you're in trouble. And so there obviously is that blowout risk, but at the same time, he's doing the blowing out, and he's playing huge minutes if this game does stay competitive. So I think that Kawhi does look good.
What do you make of Lou Williams? This is a guy who I've enjoyed a lot off the bench, simply because he goes a little bit overlooked with George and Kawhi out there, but gets decent usage, has the ball in his hands, decent assist rate off the bench. Now has been inserted into the starting lineup back and forth, has not seen that assist rate as high over the past couple of games. Would assume that is dealing with the starting lineup. But do you think this is a matchup where Lou Williams could exceed value at 6,900, or are you staying away?
Yeah, I'm interested because he went back to the bench last game. Yep. His minutes were limited because he was pulled with like 10 and a half minutes to go in a blowout. But I like him a lot more coming off the bench, because he should, if the game's competitive, he should still get plenty of minutes. But with Paul George being out, you're back to having that second unit with Williams and Harrell, like it was for the beginning of the season, like it has been for a lot of the year, where Williams is really productive. Prior to George's injury, Doc Rivers had gone to staggering George and Kawhi. So it was having a negative impact on Williams, who obviously doesn't have the ball quite as much when he's playing alongside George. So assuming he does come off the bench, he does look like a pretty good option. The only real risk is, again, if this game gets ugly, and it's something Lofty points out a lot, the guys like Lou Williams actually end up being hurt the most. Yes. Because he's going to just get pulled early in the fourth quarter and miss out on a lot of minutes.
Yeah, he's going to miss out on a lot of minutes, and typically he's not the one, as you said, doing the blowing out. It's right. Like he's not the one driving the offense per se. Now, yes, he could go nuclear over the first 3 quarters and help it, but typically that is not something you'd project for. But he'll be pulled because he is considered one of their best players and better players, so he gets to sit down. So absolutely makes a ton of sense there. But anybody else from Clippers or Orlando from a cheap perspective that is at least worth mentioning? Doesn't feel like there's much there, but wondering if you have anybody that you want to point out.
Yeah, I don't think so. The only thing that I could see changing is, again, if there's some weird rotation that Orlando runs on Wednesday night that someone, stands out that I wasn't expecting.
Yeah, as we're recording, that game, I believe, is about to tip off. So we'll have to wait till the NBA strategy show and, of course, the NBA deep dive, which is the write-up between Adam Scher and Adam Pfeiffer, who's been picking up some of the slack from Lofty. Lofty's just taking days off. I'm kidding. He's not taking days off. Just
the guy never works.
Never at all. I mean, just sits there and vapes all day. Come on. I kid. I will point out that is the paywalled article about NBA plays. So you can check that out if you're an Awesemo member. Again, head on over to awesemo_com on Twitter. Head on over to awesemo.com to find out other ways to sign up. We have tons of different ways to get in, giveaways. We also have some promo codes available to you. All of that over at Twitter and awesemo.com. Final game of the night for us, Denver and Golden State. I don't really have a good read on where this line may go. Nuggets, Warriors. I assume Nuggets
might be really shorthanded.
Right. So you have injuries. -8, -9 on the road. Do you go double digits for the Nuggets at Golden State? Probably. You might.
I don't think they're going to have Murray. I don't think they're going to have Harris, and they're not going to have Millsap. I don't think so.
All right, so let's say I'll say -8 is my guess, but clearly that would open up a ton. You have Jokic at the top, so you get usage there. Clearly, you have some of these other point guards and shooting guards. Think of someone like a Will Barton, who I am not seeing. There he is. He's point guard, small forward eligible. All right, DK. So he's point guard, small forward eligible. But what do you like from the Denver side? And I also throw Porter Jr. here into the mix. I know he's had a little bit of an enigmatic start to his career, but I'm pretty sure they played Wednesday night, right? They played earlier on Wednesday.
Yeah, he's going nuts.
He was just doing crazy things. He had 12 points 16 points in 7 minutes, I think, or some crazy stat, just doing what he can do and what we saw in college before he got hurt. What do you like here from the Denver side?
So depending on injury news, probably the entire team. We had Jamal Murray get carried to the locker room on Wednesday after he came into the game being questionable. We had Gary Harris and Paul Millsap both miss that game. So potentially you could be without three of the starters. If Murray is out, you get a great value option in Monte Morris. You also get Will Barton probably running point with the second unit and taking over there, which makes him more productive. You have Jokic being everything for the first unit and being more productive if Murray's not out there. And then obviously you get more minutes for guys like Malik Beasley, for Michael Porter Jr. So this is a team where I would expect to just be getting lots of guys and mixing and matching.
If over on NBA Wowie from Add More Funds, Jokic usage at 33.1 with Harris, Murray, and Millsap all off the floor. 25.1 for Paul Millsap. Who's number 3 on that list, Adam? Who's number 3 in usage with those 3 off the court?
With Millsap, Harris, and Murray off?
It's small sample minutes. It's obviously this is a very small sample.
So who was second? Jokic was first.
Will Barton second.
Okay, Barton second. Porter third?
Yep, Porter third. And again, I want to be very precise here. It's 28 minutes for Jokic, Barton at 159, Porter at 160. So this is a very, 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 very small sample. But I would say, to your point, it seems like there are a lot of pieces here. If those 3 guys are out, to pick on and to build around. Porter Jr. just 3,600 on this slate against Golden State. Could see some extended run, obviously, even in a blowout if they don't have the bodies. But what do you think from a Golden State perspective? Can they keep this close against a depleted Denver team, or is this still blowout potential for the Nuggets?
I think it should be close. I mean, Denver's really been struggling defensively. Now you're talking about them being shorthanded at Golden State. I mean, it's obviously Golden State's bad, but I think that if I had to, and obviously I'm not going to, but if I had to guess on which games blow out, I would put this one behind the Clippers game and behind the Milwaukee game.
Right. I agree with you completely. And that is a bit of a fool's errand to try to project the blowouts. Of course, Vegas tries to do it to get money on both sides of the contest. Looking at Porter Jr. here, 17 points, 4 rebounds, an assist, a steal, and a block in 14 minutes. He's 7 of 9 from the field, 2 of 3 from three-point range. That is with 4:14 to go in the third quarter in this game between the Nuggets and the Hornets here on Wednesday night. Any other pieces from this game or any other insight from the Golden State Warriors perspective of names that you think are at least worthwhile?
Damian Lee will be starting for Golden State. He's finally back under contract. So that does take some appeal away from guys like Alec Burks, who probably loses a few minutes. D'Angelo Russell is cheap. He will most likely have a monster game because if he had done anything reasonable the other night, I would have won a tournament. And that's how that works. I do think Russell's price point is fair. He played 34 minutes in that blowout the other night. He played 34 minutes the game before that as well. So he looks pretty good. Beyond that, though, not much here for me.
All right. So as always, you can find Adam over on Twitter at ShipMyMoneyDFS. You find him writing at Osmo.com. If you remember, his DMs are open. He loves getting direct messages from each and every one of you. So reach out to him, all hours of the night. Just let Adam. I'm kidding. Don't reach out to him at 2:00 in the morning. That's when he's on Tinder. No, I'm kidding about that too. I'm joking. I'm having fun here. Anyway, but for real, you find Adam on Twitter at ShipMyMoneyDFS. You also find his writing at Osmo.com. He's on the NBA Strategy Show a couple of days a week. And then you have, of course, the NBA Deeper Dive. That is available on YouTube for free, typically at 5 p.m. Sometimes with later locks, you may get them a little bit later in the day. That is Eastern time, of course. Find Osmo at Osmo_com, and then there's Osmo NBA and so on of each of the sports. Find me, if you so choose, at Dan Strafford. And find the DFS Early Bird available on all your podcasting apps and, of course, on YouTube. So leave a comment if you so choose. Like this video, subscribe to our channel, hit that alarm bell so you know when we go live and when new content hits our channel. Tomorrow morning, you get Lofty and myself. Saturday morning, it's Emac and Adam right here on the DFS Early Bird presented by Osmo.com.